Recently I had a big project. Turned out to be a huge project, and I had a deadline. It was about 10 days away, and I spent a few days learning everything I needed to know about some stuff that I didn't know much about, very intensely, like every waking hour. And then I spent the rest of the time writing about it. I had to write a legal document. And it was really, it was the most intense bout of intellectual work I've ever done in my life. And I got to where I had all the information I needed. I understood it, and now I had to create this document out of it. And for the first couple of days of writing before the deadline pressure got intense, I would get to my office at 8 in the morning, and I would look up and it'd be 2 in the afternoon. I've never had this experience where I've completely lost track of time. My mind was completely engaged or something. I don't know what was going on. All I know is I was completely serene and peaceful. And I wrote 40 pages in 2 days. I didn't write an outline. Hope it doesn't turn out to be a piece of crap, but seemed like it was flowing perfectly. And I was really intensely concentrated, but at the same time, completely relaxed. And it was really, my mind was not absent or anything. My mind, and I didn't have any feeling of awareness, but I had a feeling of complete serenity and peace.
You were in the zone. There was no sense of a separate self interfering with your work. You were just flowing. You weren't referencing a separate self because of your attention was required on your work. So you weren't continually going back to the sense of being a separate self. Your mind was just flowing, doing its job. And because there was no separate self involved in the work, you felt that it was also very peaceful. Normally that kind of situation or environment would be extremely agitated. You'd expect to be wound up and agitated by the end of it. But you described the opposite. You said this was the most intense bout of intellectual work you had ever done, but you felt peaceful all the way through it.
Not all the way through it. At the end, I got
At the
pretty
end
agitated
of it, okay.
as the deadline approached.
Okay, yeah, okay.
But yeah, I've had that kind of experience to a lesser degree. I've always found that if I can get my mind locked in on something, it doesn't matter,
Yes. You see, if your mind is paying attention to an object, it's not paying attention to the separate self. So it's the principle of mantra meditation. You focus your mind instead of the mind jumping from object to object. All the disparate energies of the mind are brought to bear on a single object. In this case, your single object was your document. And this steadies and focuses the mind. It's only a short step then from the mind back to its source. So this is why mantra meditation is often used as a preliminary. So this was like a kind of spontaneous document meditation that you had, that your mind was engaged in. And because your mind wasn't jumping from object to object, but was focused on one object, you already began to feel the peace of your true nature in the background, because your mind wasn't fizzing all over the place, jumping from object to object. It was steadied, albeit steadied on an object. It hadn't yet dissolved in its source, but even with the mind focused like this on an object, the peace of our true nature in the background begins to be felt. When you had the experience of peace, didn't you feel that it was in the background of your experience?
Yes.
But yes,
It was there the whole time. But at 2 o'clock when I realized that I had to eat, I'd go, God, I feel good.
Yes. It's because your mind hadn't been jumping from object to object. There was a steadying of the mind. It wasn't yet the full dissolution of the mind, but it was a steadying. The surface of the water wasn't completely ruffled. The surface of the water was becoming smoother and smoother, and therefore no longer distorting or obscuring the peace of your true nature in the background of experience. Normally the mind is jumping so fast from object to object that the mind obscures this piece in the background of experience. When the mind begins to steady, the piece in the background of experience begins to shine through. When the mind then turns its direction, turns its attention back on itself, the mind actually then dissolves in that piece. But in your case, it was filtering through the mind. It was felt in the presence of the mind. This explains some very strange behaviors, like collecting teaspoons, or train spotting, or things that seem a little strange. They're like little spontaneous meditations that the mind has, out of its desire for the peace of its true nature, the mind has spontaneously gathered its energies on one object and focused its disparate energies on a single object. Doesn't matter whether it's teaspoons or trains or whatever. Sometimes at a station, you just leave the station and there are 2 or 3 elderly gentlemen with their cameras photographing the train as it goes by. Their interest, it's all they're interested in life is train spotting, or teaspoons, or mugs with head of the Queen on them, or whatever it is. And the deep desire behind these rather strange behaviors is the desire to gather the mind in one place. They don't yet know about sinking the mind in its source, but it's a gathering of the mind on an object. It's like a spontaneous meditation.